turn, with 71.6% of the vote. Wine says the election was stolen. Soon after polling day, Ugandan soldiers raided Wine's home. But he was already gone. Wine says he feared for his life. During the campaign, he often wore a helmet and a flak jacket at rallies. Security forces were always nearby. Since going underground, Wine has stayed visible in another way. That's through social media. In videos and messages posted on X, he speaks directly to Ugandans and to the army chief. Look at his latest post. He claims the search for him is intensifying. He says operatives went to Bosabala, a place in Uganda's capital, asking if he had been there. Wine also claims an aerial drone hovered over the area the night before. And finally, he ends with, "I will reappear at an appropriate time." If you notice carefully, there's one thing common across all the posts. It's the hashtag. In every message online, he adds, "Free Uganda now." And what are viewers to make of it? It's meant to show one simple thing, that the hunt is real, but that it is ineffective. By describing raids, drones and informers, he is projecting pressure. He is projecting calm instead of panic. He also shows he is politically present. Even though he is physically absent, he's reaching out to Ugandans. Each post is meant to be a performance, one where the pursuers look powerful. But it's the leader on the run who controls the narrative. The man leading the hunt is General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. He is the army chief and he is President Museveni's son. Many see him as Museveni's political heir. Kainerugaba has responded angrily to Wine's videos. On social media, he has called Wine a coward, a baboon, and even a terrorist. This is not just the search for one man. It is a political showdown playing out online. The public exchange has raised tensions across Uganda. Many fear that if Wine is arrested or attacked, the country could see unrest. Wine has strong support among young Ugandans. Many of them are unemployed. Many are angry about corruption, and many want change after 4 decades of the same leader. Tensions rose further on January the 23rd. That day, soldiers raided Wine's home again. His wife, Barbara Chagulanyi, says she was roughed up by security forces. She was later hospitalized for anxiety and bruises. Speaking from her hospital bed, Barbara, known widely as Barbie, said dozens of men in military uniforms stormed the house. Barbara says she refused to cooperate.
Yesterday, the group that came to raid our home was a different group. They were so many, heavily armed, drunk, and they looked the same and spoke one language. They broke into the gate, the lower gate. Our askari was in a different corner, so he saw them and he called me.
Also described masked men lifting her by her pyjamas. She says one soldier banged her head against the pillar, demanding a phone password. General Kainerugaba has taken responsibility for the raid, but he denies she was attacked. "My soldiers did not beat Barbie," he wrote on X. President Museveni, meanwhile, has accused the opposition of trying to incite violence. At 81 years old, Museveni will now serve a 7th term. That brings him closer to 5 decades in power. His supporters say he has brought stability. They say Uganda remains a refuge for people fleeing conflict across the region. But for now, the focus remains on one man in hiding and a political battle playing out in real time, one post at a time. And joining us to discuss this further is Gilbert Kadiagala, who is an Emeritus Professor of International Relations at the University of Witwatersrand, joining us live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Welcome to First Post Africa.
Thank you.
Let's first look at the situation at play. Of course, Bobi Wine is still in hiding. How do you think that President Museveni and his son, Kainerugaba, will be taking him in hiding, posting on social media? And do you think they'll see the fact they haven't found him as a failure?
Currently, I think it is a failure because Bobi Wine remains the symbol of defiance to the government, and therefore the failure to find him is also a failure to in fact, to forget about the election, to get over the election, which they wanted to have an election, and then life would return back to normal. I think the very fact that somebody who is very defiantly talking about a stolen election and this person has not been found, it's a concern to the government, because I think they expected that things would be, in fact, back to political normalcy, but it's not. And therefore, the symbolism is important here. I think Wine wants to keep the defiance alive on social media, because that's, I think, one way of, in fact, preempting.
And Gilbert, let's move on now. Bobi Wine has said to us on First Post and to other news outlets that he will come out of hiding at the appropriate time. When do you think that will be, and what will his return look like?
I think his return is predicated on two things. One, there is a negotiated process where he can return and maybe go into exile, or where he can return and probably not face any jail terms or any prosecutions. So, but I don't think those negotiations are going to be held by local actors. I suspect that there will have to be organized. The mediation process has to be organized by international actors who can speak to both sides of the conflict, because the government will have to concede, in fact, to his release if he's found and if he's jailed. So I think his coming out has to occur alongside some pledge that, in fact, he's not going to suffer the consequences.
And
otherwise, if he's just arrested without a negotiated process, he's going to jail definitely.
I'd like to expand on that, Gilbert. You say that he would go to jail. Is there anything else that could happen to Bobi Wine if he is caught by Kainerugaba's forces? And does this activity from the army and from the presidency show that Uganda could potentially now be a dictatorship?
The whole point of raiding his house, the whole point of continuing to, in fact, threaten his family is essentially to get him out of hiding, and therefore I think the government wants him arrested. As I said, they want him arrested because he remains the only sign of resistance to an electoral process that the government thinks went very well. So the whole saga is predicated around he needs to get to jail. I think that's what the government wants. I don't think they will kill him, although some of his supporters have been killed. But I see the outcome as I said, a negotiated outcome. At some point, if there are serious international actors who can lean on to the government to get him released so that probably he can go into exile. I don't see him remaining in Uganda as a free man at this point. And I think on the dictatorship thing, it's been very clear from the beginning that the election was not held as a free and fair election. So the trend towards dictatorship in Uganda has been ongoing, I think, for the last 30 years or so. So this is not a very new phenomenon.
Gilbert, thank you ever so much for your time and for joining us on First Post Africa.
Thank you.